Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN Weekly for Saturday, April 4th, 2020. And our top story today, keeping Americans on track for financial security. Well, joining me now is David Musto. He's the president and CEO of Ascensus. David, thanks so much for joining us on the program today.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Thrilled to be here.
It's great to see you. And you run a major retirement record-keeping organization, financial services organization. I want to see first, how are you and the team doing given the social distancing parameters and working from home? That sometimes can present challenges.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. The team is doing really well. We have over 3,700 associates that are really working hard for our clients through this period. We have a noble mission. We help over 10 million Americans save for what matters: their retirement, their children's education, and their health care. We're fortunate that we've spent a lot of time in the past really thinking through and preparing for the type of event where we might need to have most, if not all, of our associates working from home. We've been fortunate to make a lot of investments in our technology to enable our associates to communicate well together and connect with our clients well. So thanks for asking. Everyone's great and healthy and prepared to serve our clients well.
That's really good to hear. Glad to hear that. Now, you're in multiple lines. You have the record keeping, but you're a financial services organization. You have multiple types of clients. So not just a traditional 401k type of client, but you're also one of the leading providers of 529 administration and programs. But David, what has been the general sentiment, the investor reaction, whether they're a 529 partner or an individual participant calling the call center?
Yeah, so not surprisingly, there's a fair amount of anxiety and concern given the current environment, even amongst folks that have lived previously through the Great Recession of 2008 time period. We see phone calls related to financial matters increasing. There was, in a typical year, maybe 2% of the outreach to our organization may have been related to questions related to their investment strategies. We're seeing well over 10% of the phone calls now being related to that topic. We think it's important to really meet those savers where they are today. There's no way to allay all the fear and concern. We certainly don't have a crystal ball and can't control the environment. But we know some things that are very helpful. The first is, particularly for a lot of the small businesses that we serve, there are financial advisors and planners that are associated with those workplaces and available to help participants, savers, really think through their financial concerns and matters. So that's really a first call from our perspective. We're also providing a lot of educational content, webinars on what we call financial wellness, really thinking holistically about someone's financial situation, prioritizing the best steps to take today to ensure that we're being thoughtful about the needs for the future, whether that's saving for retirement or healthcare or kids' education. We're also using income projection tools and capabilities to help people really stay more focused on the long term. The biggest risk right now is that savers focus on today and ignore the implications of their decisions on their long-term goals and objectives. So by being able to look and simulate what retirement income might look like, as an example, years ahead based on the decisions we make today, that can really provide, I think, more help and more confidence for savers in today's environment.
Yeah, it's definitely that long term, and it's hard, right? I mean, people are losing their jobs and they're thinking about today, but balancing the needs of today versus the needs of tomorrow, really important. David, your organization, as well as your peers in the retirement space, whether it's industry associations and other financial services organizations, have been really supportive of the CARES Act. I want to get your perspective on that because it has some retirement changes allowing for loans and withdrawals. What's your perspective? How is the team adapting to implementing some of these new rules?
Yeah, well, listen, first off, small business is the backbone of the American economy, with over 30 million small businesses. and which we're really most concerned about. Obviously, large institutions as well are being affected by this crisis. But when you think about, just millions upon millions of American workers that are tied to smaller institutions that are at more risk through this type of a financial experience, we need to do our best for them. We're really pleased to see the government stepping up with the stimulus bill and with the CARES Act. There's a number of provisions in there that are helping support small business through a challenging period. And there are also a number of different um, uh, aspects to that we've been advocating for on behalf of the census and our industry, which I think we're very fortunate to now see come through the CARES Act. Really at a high level, it's providing the ability for savers to both access loans in their retirement programs and pay them back over extended periods of time, maybe being able to accept access withdrawals from their plans, have any penalties avoided in those types of distributions. And also, there's this concept of a minimum required distribution when someone's reached a later age to start to take money out of a retirement program. We now have relief so that people are able to maintain more of their savings, protect more of their savings over time. We're also working really hard, as I mentioned, with small businesses. We're concerned that small businesses may find pressure ultimately to either modify, change, or terminate their workplace retirement programs. And that would be a really bad thing for American workers. We know that Americans that are in a defined contribution plan saving at work are much more highly likely to be saving more and have better retirement outcomes. So we're working very closely with small business to help counsel them through all the alternatives for maintaining those programs at lower cost or in more efficient ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's seeing that happen would be the antithesis of what we just went through with the Secure Act. But again, businesses and individuals, as we know, focusing on the short term. Obviously, a very difficult time with so many Americans. David, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day. I know you're doing a lot of coordination and working with your team virtually, of course, and appreciate you coming on the program this week.
Thank you so much, and great health to you and your family.
And when we come back, we'll take a look at our best segments for the week. So stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive Fibrex composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. Earlier this week, I spoke with the Pew Charitable Trust Project Director, Sarah Saddlemeyer, about student loan borrowing. Let's take a look.
So something we're seeing from a student loans angle is that the administration, the Department of Education, and Congress are all in agreement that student loans are an important issue to tackle. And they've done that so far in a host of ways. The president, first and foremost, declared a national emergency, which opens up a bunch of authorities and the ability to provide additional flexibility, especially from the Department of Education. There's been an order to stop collecting interest on student loans, to provide access to emergency forbearances, and recently, yesterday we heard that they're going to stop collections on loans that are in default. And so these are really important. Our research points to flexibilities like these being important to helping people manage their loans in the best of times, right? We are not in the best of times. And so beyond this, we're thinking about two things that really matter for people. The first is what additional flexibilities might be needed from an evidence-based perspective. And second, what happens after the crisis, after things have maybe not gotten back to normal, but when people come off of these pause payments or forbearances and start repaying again. So to hit the first point, we're really thinking about, a major issue that borrowers have is enrolling and re-enrolling in plans that take your income into account, which often mean that your payments are more affordable, right? So if you're making $25,000 a year or $30,000 a year, your payments may be less than someone who's making a lot more. And that's a really important safety net for a lot of borrowers. But right now, what that involves is submitting paperwork to your servicer. And as I talked about before the break, if your servicer isn't available to process that paperwork, that could push someone into delinquency, or your payment could skyrocket, right? Because you haven't recertified your income to be able to, for the department to know that this is the income you have and this is what your payment should be. So for folks who don't want to be in these emergency forbearance, keep paying, they might not have the ability to continue to do that if they need to recertify. And also if folks who do use the forbearances, when they come off of them, if they want to get into these plans, that might be tough. And so really thinking creatively about ways that Congress and the department and servicers can put provisions in place to streamline, whether that's extending the deadline, whether that's making the documentation you need slightly more flexible for a temporary period. So that's one really important thing. Another is really having.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to say, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Another really important thing is for the Department of Education and servicers to be on the same page and be communicating about emergency provisions, about ways in the best way possible to maintain the level of service, again, that is possible, and really be opening lines of communication and ensure that plans are in place. I think one thing that is clear from this emergency is that people are rethinking a lot of decisions. And we know from past recessions and from past issues such as, hurricanes or other national disasters that does impact in different ways college enrollment, people's borrowing decisions. And another thing sort of along those lines that we're thinking a lot about is the people who are on these forbearances, who pause their payments for the length of this emergency. At the same time, they're going to be coming off of those. They're going to be re-entering repayment. How do we prepare a really large group of people to re-enter repayment and think about sort of the tools available to them if they're still struggling? And how do we get servicers ready to take all that incoming calls, paperwork, and sort of get everyone back online? So I think these things are all going to be happening together.
And I also spoke with Dr. Rivka Liss-Levinson, Director of Research for the Center of State and Local Government Excellence, about public healthcare workers and some research they had done. Let's take a look.
Sure. So this study that we did with the support of the de Beaumont Foundation was looking at the composition of the state and local public health workforce and looking at it in the broader context of the overall state and local government public sector workforce. So what we really wanted to do was get an understanding of how the public health workforce, the governmental public health workforce, compares to the state and local workforce overall. And one of the reasons to do that was really so that we could think about the ways in which they're similar and different. And then I know sometimes, we think like individual sectors within public sector workforce are so different, but if you are able to find, where some of the similarities are, you may be able to use some of that information to help inform best practices and to be able to share from one industry to another within the public sector. Yeah, so one of the things that we focused on was kind of looking at the demographic makeup of the public health workforce and how that compares with state and local government overall. And so what we found is that the public health workforce overall tends to be more likely to be female, are more racially and ethnically diverse than the broader public sector workforce, are older on average, have higher educational attainment, have somewhat higher salaries, which really goes along with the educational attainment piece, and even have longer tenures than their counterparts in the broader public sector workforce. There's some overlap between what the public health workforce does and the healthcare workforce. For example, many folks in the public health workforce are nurses, but there are also a lot of positions that we may not necessarily think about that fall within the public health workforce. So if you think about folks, environmental health directors, people who perform food inspections, that's your public health workforce. If you think about community health educators, behavioral health specialists. So it really runs the gamut in terms of what we're talking about. It's people who help with infectious disease. It's so it's not just some of what we think of as frontline healthcare workers. There is overlap, but at the same time, public health also encompasses some other positions that I think people don't always think about right away in terms of how is this happening? How is your swimming pool or restaurant getting inspected? That's public health. So I think one thing that's really interesting here is that, a lot of the talk on the pandemic is emphasizing the resources in terms of physical resources that are needed. So as you mentioned, the personal protective equipment. But what I think this study really underscores is the need to understand the human element, as you said, the people behind who are performing some of these activities that are helping to, protect our lives. So it's not just enough to understand the, as I said, kind of the physical resources that we need, but also this, I think, report helps us to better understand what it is that we need in terms of there's problems with recruitment, retention, overall in the public sector workforce and in the public health workforce. Studies from public health have found that almost half of the state and local governmental public health workers are considering leaving their jobs in the next 5 years. So when you think about that, it's critical, especially in times like this when, when we're so focused on the important role that public health workers play, that we think about what our needs are and what maybe we can learn, as I mentioned earlier, kind of across sectors about what different best practices are and highlighting and sharing those practices. Yeah. I would say the other thing that I think would be interesting though is just thinking in the future about how perceptions of public sector workforce and the public health workforce may change as a result of the pandemic. So thinking about potentially, there's always public health is something that's chronically underfunded, and that's part of what shapes what positions you have, and how many people. And so it'll be interesting to see if we're able to help improve having a skilled workforce of sufficient size for public health and other public sector positions, as the fallout from the pandemic continues. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Pension benefits are really important. And I think the other thing will be assessing for individual cohorts, what are those benefits that are most attractive to them. So we know that a lot of folks going into public sector work are mission driven, and that's the same whether it's first responders, teachers, or public health workers. And so it's thinking about how you can best leverage what the interests are of folks who are considering going into these positions. What can you offer them in terms of whether it's benefits like pension or healthcare, or whether it's more non-traditional benefits like family leave. For example, we saw that 77% of the state and local governmental public health workforce is female. So perhaps there might be some, added interest in certain benefits, or if you are thinking about student loan repayment for many folks who have to get advanced degrees. So I think it's taking a closer look and thinking about, for that specific profession, for that specific cohort that you're trying to attract, what are the benefits that are going to help you really attract and then retain the workforce that you're looking for.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. But you know what? We're not done for the week, because tomorrow I sit down with members of the media, academia, and financial services on our BRN Sunday podcast. You're not going to want to miss this great show. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-757-1451. That's 1-800-757-1451.